Hello, my name is Ashley Durkin-Rixey, and I'm the Director of Communications at ACT, the App Association. I'm so excited to be here with you for our panel, Access to Capital, the Issues. This is part 2 of a 2-part webinar series where we discuss access to capital and the slew of issues that Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color face when trying to start a business. You can find an archive of part 1 of our discussion on the App Association's YouTube channel. Before we begin our panel, we are very lucky to have Albert Chang, counsel at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Office of Innovation, to give us some opening remarks. I'll turn it over to you, Albert.
Well, thank you, Ashley, for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to provide opening remarks at today's webinar. The CFPB recognizes that small businesses play a key role in fostering community development and fueling economic growth, both nationally and in their local communities. Small businesses, when defined as having fewer than 500 employees, provide work for almost half of all employees in the private sector. Estimates suggest these businesses have created 2 out of every 3 jobs since 1993. Women-owned, minority-owned, and small businesses in particular play an important role in supporting their local communities through wealth creation and employing members of the local community. To contribute meaningfully to the US economy, though, small businesses, including women-owned and minority-owned small businesses, as well as those located in rural markets, need access to credit to smooth business cash flows from current operations and to allow entrepreneurs to take advantage of opportunities for growth through investment. At the same time, according to the National Economic Council, despite serving as a critical part of the US economy, small businesses generally have limited access to capital and other vital resources that help entrepreneurs grow their businesses. The COVID-19 pandemic has also had a swift and dramatic impact on small businesses. Many of them were forced to shut down temporarily or reduce operations in response to mandatory state and local stay-at-home orders. Small businesses also experienced a significant drop in demand for goods and services, as well as disruption in supply chains. Because of these impacts, many businesses experienced a sharp drop in revenue and increased economic stress. This was especially true for minority-owned businesses. Researchers from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York observed that activity among Black small businesses fell more sharply than businesses representing other populations between the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and its initial peak in April 2020. Another survey found that the pandemic worsened the gap for small businesses owned by women of color when compared to other firms. The acting director of the CFPB has stated that he wants to make sure that we are doing all we can for the small businesses around the country so that they have access to capital without experiencing discrimination or predatory activities. To that end, the CFPB enforces critical laws that protect small business owners, including from harmful discrimination in their access to and use of credit. The CFPB also has supervisory authority over large insured depository institutions and insured credit unions, many of which have originated loans under Check Protection Program, or PPP. Consistent with its authority to ensure compliance with the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECOA, the Bureau conducted examinations to assess potential fair lending risks attendant to the institution's use of PPP. Small businesses will continue to play a vital role in driving economic activity and supporting job creation, and governments at all levels are likely to promote an adequate flow of capital to these businesses. But without more robust data, it will continue to be difficult to assess just how well the market is meeting the needs of small businesses. On that front, staff are in the process of implementing Section 1071 of the Dodd-Frank Act, which would establish a data collection loans. Section 1071 amended the ECOA to require financial institutions to compile, maintain, and submit to the CFPB certain data on applications for credit for women-owned, minority-owned, and small businesses for the statutory purpose of supporting community and business development and for fair lending enforcement. As you might have seen, the CFPB released a proposed rule for Section 1071 just on September 1st. We urge you to review the proposed rule and provide input that would help us finalize the rule. Comments will be received for 90 days. Of course, they will be welcomed by the CFPB. In addition to the supervisory, enforcement, and rulemaking tools serving a crucial role in ensuring fair, equitable, and non-discriminatory access to credit, market participants are, of course, critical players in identifying innovative ways of providing more and better access to capital. In late 2018, the Bureau convened a symposium on access to credit that included a panel that discussed solutions to accessing credit in microenterprise and small business lending, as well as the roles played by different stakeholders in this space. The follow-on report from that symposium, which is available on the CFPB website, summarizes several of the programs discussed on that and other panels. A common theme across all the panels was the need to explore both high-tech and high-touch solutions for expanding access to credit. Providing financial education, coaching, and counseling were frequently mentioned by some panelists as successful components of high-touch relationships between borrowers and lenders or servicers. Like that symposium, today's webinar focuses on not just the challenges of obtaining access to capital, but also potential solutions. The Bureau, including the Office of Innovation, the Office of Small Business Lending Markets, and the Office of Lending, look forward to hearing more about innovative market solutions to expanding access to capital, to financial services, and we recognize that entrepreneurs often have innovative solutions to providing that access to consumers and businesses in their community. If you're an entrepreneur focused on access to capital for underserved populations, please feel free to contact me or others at the CFPB as you go through your journey. So with that, I will hand it back over to Ashley to kick off the panel.
Thank you so much, Albert, and our thanks to CFPB for participating in this. And as Albert said, if you want to know more, if you have anything you'd like to share, please visit CFPB's website to find out how to get in contact with them and read more about what they're doing in this area. So I'm going to set our scene just a little, add a few more facts in here before we turn to our wonderful panel. Let's get into some details. The racial wealth gap in the United States has remained relatively unchanged since 1967, with Black and Brown Americans making a little more than $57 for every 100 in income earned by their white counterparts. When you consider that 66% of new entrepreneurs start their businesses using personal savings, that statistic becomes even more alarming. And to make matters worse, Black and Brown entrepreneurs are often denied loans nearly twice as often as white entrepreneurs. These statistics are the economic reality for millions of Americans and a key factor in driving economic opportunity out of reach for many people of color. In our first discussion in this series, we talked about many of the unique challenges that these entrepreneurs in the app economy in particular face, like the harms of patterns and internal bias at the VC level, and the weight social capital carries in addition to financial capital. Sort of the whole, it's not what you know, it's who you know when you're looking to start a business. So for this, we're going to discuss emerging and existing opportunities and programs available to minority entrepreneurs to help them overcome the unique challenges they face, as well as discussing group responsibility to create a more equitable environment for entrepreneurs everywhere. Now I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful panel. So panel, we'll start with Chris. Introduce yourselves and where you're coming to us from.
All right, my name is Chris Sims. I'm the CEO and co-founder of both Sagayo Studios and a new program, a new effort that we're launching, Kavu, which is a social learning platform. We'll talk a little more in a little bit, but I'm coming from the Deep South in Birmingham, Alabama.
Great. And now we'll turn to Castley.
Good afternoon. My name is Castley Johnson. I'm the CEO and founder of My Home Pathway. I'm coming to you from Jersey City, New Jersey, here in the Northeast. We're a platform built up around providing equitable access to home ownership, and again, building consumer wealth through that platform.
Great. And Danielle.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Solomon. I am coming from Maryland, DC area. I'm the Director of Justice Reform and Racial Equity Policy at Microsoft.
Thank you. All right, we're ready to jump into our discussion. So as I mentioned previously, in part one, we set the stage with a clear definition and understanding of what capital means. So just a refresher, we're defining capital. And mainly when we think about capital, our minds go to money, whether it's through equity, loans, grants, or crowdfunding. But social capital also has tremendous value, and oftentimes the two go hand in hand. So I'm going to turn it over to Castley and Chris to tell us a little bit about the definitions of social capital and how that plays a part when starting a business. Castley, can you talk a little bit about that and My Home Pathway?
Yeah, again, appreciate it. Ashley, thank you again. Social capital is super important in terms of building a business. When you talk social capital, you talk networks. You talk a little bit about early stage small business owners, starting their businesses with their own capital. Again, savings that they've been able to get over time, or friends and family. So a big part of it is that friends and family early round of support for innovative businesses that are looking to scale, right? So you're talking kind of that early stage in the startup, unicorn, Facebook kind of play. And so if you don't have a network that has a lot of capital in that network, so we're talking 10 times kind of net worth between black and whites, then you don't have a springboard to really launch from, right? So that's where, again, my net worth is a part of my network, is literally tied to my network. Those are similar things that, again, you learn over time, and you kind of see the disproportionate outcomes that continue to, show us over time. Kind of, again, you mentioned 1967, we have higher earning, college graduated black and brown folks, working in corporate America and other places, but have not been able to make a dent in net worth. Right? Because again, we have not provided the capital required to really create a lot of those Facebook type organizations that are founded by women of color and, just women in general and other minority founders. So again, the capital from a check standpoint, VC, banks, other pieces is super important, because again, talk and pledges don't really help to move the needle that way. But also the capabilities of your network. So you're going to need people that are developers, that are marketers, that are, operations folks. So as expansive your lawyers, as your network is where you create more opportunities around communities. So the social capital aspects, again, as you mentioned, sometimes is overlooked, but it's vitally important. As you expand that social capital, you expand opportunities for a lot of small businesses to really think about, hey, I want to become that next, Facebook, Uber, Lyft, and others. So again, there's room and improvement that's needed on both sides of that.
Great. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how this played into your entrepreneurial journey?
Absolutely. So the connections, when we said things as simple as we like to hire people that we know. Hiring is such a complex thing. So when you're in a position to reach out to bring people into your company, you're going to reach out to your friends first, which just perpetuates this, everyone at your company looks like you. And so as a small business, when we started our journey, I had the opportunity through Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act to get training in in Boston, Massachusetts. And this really became crystallized for me as walking down the street. I went to a bar, and the way you knew how much you were going to pay for the drink is you had to actually solve a math formula. That's how they were determining the cost of a drink. And it's interesting, when I got to looking around, the people that I was bumping into all had this immense amount of access and connection and intelligence, that if that was my network, when I would go and was trying to solve a problem, I would have a much deeper set of resources to go from. And so this connection, who are you connected to? Who are we connected to? Who am I connected to? Is really critical when you're starting a business, every bit as much, and honestly, even more than how much money do you have in the bank. We see a lot with Sagayo. Sagayo is all about solving, creating apps for people. Small business come to us, they have an idea, we're going to help them go build it. And I see a lot of people have an idea. We want to go solve this problem, but most ideas that come to us are just bad. Not bad people, but they're just ideas that aren't fully formed yet, and we need to iterate and learn and grow. And that connection to your network is going to help you solve and better understand what is out there to solve. So that connection is actually part of what we're building with Kavu, which is around building networks and helping more people become connected to solve real human problems. Being aware when you are in that idea, I have an idea I want to go solve, how can you build your network? How can you get in the right places, be around the right people that you can deepen that? Cassidy, I love what you said. My network is part of my net worth, and building those connections. One of the interesting things, so seeing the importance of kind of walking down the streets around MIT and what that meant, but we became very connected in Birmingham, Alabama with the local workforce development groups. And that community and us investing in that community and volunteering our time and doing the sweat equity investment opened up a lot of really important doors for us with Sagayo. One, in being able to hire some really phenomenal people that were able, stretching kind of outside of our normal network, which deepened the value of Sagayo, deepened our ability to solve really cool problems and have lots of different ideas and approaches to it. But it did require us investing and going there and finding those people and really hunting out, like, who do I need to be talking to here? And when we did that and we deepened our community, we were able to deepen what our small business was able to do. And we did some really cool things through grant funding, partnering, doing public-private partnership, partnering with nonprofits out there that really aligned with our vision and our mission of what we're trying to do. But it did require a lot of effort on our part, of reaching out, of finding the people, understanding their problems, getting to know them, and not being, the saviors, but coming and truly aligning with them and partnering and helping build and deepen their ability. And with that, and that mutual relationship became very energizing for us as a company, and was something I think is very important to consider when you're building something. Who can you partner with? Who can you learn? And how can you get into the rooms with more people to deepen your network, deepen the people you can connect to, and understand the problems that are out there to be solved?
Great. Danielle, I'm going to turn to you next. As we know, and Albert mentioned this in his remarks, COVID-19 definitely changed the lens at which we look at small business and what can be done to build small businesses back in our economy. But one of the other things that also happened was, after the murder of George Floyd, looking at a deeper examination of how we're looking at racial disparity in the country on a number of levels, including financially. And as Cassidy mentioned, it's one thing to make a pledge, but it's another to take action. And that's something that Microsoft has done. Can you tell us a little more about the Racial Equity Initiative and some of the ways Microsoft has taken the traditional fiscal side of capital and married it with social capital?
Thanks, Ashley. And thank you again for inviting me to come and talk about this really important topic. So you're exactly right. COVID-19 really showcased and exacerbated long-lasting racial inequality in America, right? Like it highlighted it and exacerbated a lot of the disparities we see. And after the murder of George Floyd, Microsoft outlined a series of commitments designed to address racial injustice and inequality experienced by racial and ethnic minorities in the United States, with a focus on Black communities in particular. We talked to our employees, we talked to community leaders, and then we developed a set of actions that we believed are meaningful steps to improve and change the communities in which we live and we work. One of the biggest areas of focus for us has been around our ecosystem, our supply chain. We committed to double the number of Black-owned approved suppliers over the next 3 years and spend $500 million with those existing and new suppliers. We're also working to double the percentage of our transaction volumes through Black-owned banks and external managers, where we have existing strong banking relationships, and we want to grow that base so we can increase opportunity for those firms to attract even more capital. We're also investing with the FDIC to target MDIs, which we know will directly enable an increase in funds to local communities. So those local small businesses, restaurants, housing opportunities. And we've also been actively investing to support Black-owned small businesses by increasing financing to existing and new partners in our supply chain to support those cash flow needs that we know are needed. We've also invested in training programs, really focused on tech solutions, financial management, and go-to-market readiness. The other thing I'll just say is Microsoft is really taking an across-the-company approach. What I highlighted here was really focused on our ecosystem, but we've also done a lot of work internally as well, investing in our D&I work, as well as growing the number of Black senior folks inside Microsoft. And then we have a whole body of work that's focused on what we are doing in communities. And that is very much focused around skilling, education, criminal justice reform, broadband, as well as tech acceleration and nonprofits.
One of the themes that I've picked up that everyone has talked about is investing in your own community as well. And Kathleen, I think My Home Pathway is a wonderful example of also sort of returning that investment into the community. Can you tell us a little bit about what My Home Pathway does?
Yeah, thank you again. So My Home Pathway, we're building a platform geared towards creating equitable access to home ownership. So again, you mentioned 1967. So 1968, we made discriminatory practice called redlining illegal in this country. And that's when, unfortunately, a lot of financial institutions, and actually it was a government-sponsored program before, would circle certain communities of color and say, we're not lending to those communities of color. And so that created a big access to capital gap for home ownership and for building wealth. And so we got rid of that in 1968, but we actually hadn't gotten rid of a lot of the infrastructure, the disparate outcome infrastructure that continues to lead us in this area. So in 1968, we had 43% Black home ownership in this country. In 2019, we had 41%. So we actually went down. And again, home ownership is at the core of consumer and individual wealth and family wealth in America. So how do we make that process more equitable? So at My Home Pathway, we're getting rid of the excuse that minority communities are too risky to lend to. Because again, a lot of times lenders fall back and say, hey, I would love to lend you guys money, but you guys are too risky for us. And we have to operate in a safety and soundness manner from our regulators and to return good, have good returns for our stakeholders and our shareholders. So we want to say, hey, we understand from a lender standpoint, you have to operate in a safety and soundness manner, and you have to make good lending decisions. But there's a lot of people that have not been provided the right guidance in terms of how to make better, smarter financial decisions and provide them that pathway to becoming better, smarter consumers. And so that's literally what we're doing. We're creating a win-win for both lenders as well as consumers to say, hey, for the folks that aren't quite there, that would like the opportunity to become homeowners, let us work with them. And My Home Pathway is building, again, that's why we call it My Home Pathway, that path that provides guidance both from a tactical standpoint as well as, simplifying financial education and literacy and behavior adjustment, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to make you smarter. So I look at it as from financial knowledge and literacy that then translates into financial decisioning and behavior. And then also that leads us to financial outcomes. So financial outcomes like home ownership, like business ownership, those are the things that, along that journey really help to move the needle. And so we want to prepare as many people as possible to, become smarter around their personal finances and open up access to them. Again, fair access around access to capital, right? And again, and while you make these better, smarter financial decisions, now a lot of these other things become more, doable for you to execute. So those are kind of the things that we're focused on. And again, we want to partner with good financial partners that can say, hey, we do want to provide this access. So a lot of the pledges that were made last year, they're still going to kind of say, hey, we would love to do it and we'd love to give capital, but you're still kind of risky, right? So we want to, again, kind of align both of those incentives to say, we'll work with the folks that are, again, within striking distance to get them into a place where they now have, they're in the right ballpark. They have the right check boxes. They have the right 700 credit score and, good DTIs and then, have down payment funds so that, again, it makes sense from a lending institution standpoint, but it also makes sense from a consumer standpoint. Like this is the foundation for me to truly build wealth and legacy and have, access. Because if I have $100,000 in equity in my home, guess what I can do? I can take that out and start a business, right? If I wanted to, right? I have options. I can take that equity and pay for my kids' college education or my grandkids' college education. So at the end of the day, we're really unlocking options and opportunity for a lot of other people to, that hasn't been that way. And so again, we have a lot of statistics. Statistics will tell us exactly what it is, 3% home ownership rates. But within the statistics, how do we kind of really re-incentivize our current structure to provide true opportunities? Because again, we're trying to grow the pie, right? How do we grow the pie and create more opportunities for more people to truly build wealth for themselves? Because that moves the economy in the right direction. That creates, additional competitiveness for the U.S. economy and for U.S. workers. And so that's what we're focused on. How do we grow the pie bigger for more people? And so that's kind of what we're doing on the My Own Pathway side.
That's such a great story. When you're talking about the need that education is such a key component of this, it made me think of some of the things that Chris works on. And so, Chris, I'm going to turn to you. But first, we must acknowledge that you and I are the white folks in this room. And you might be wondering, what do they know about what minority entrepreneurs face? One of the things that our Amplify Diverse Talent Working Group here at ACT makes clear is that we don't believe it's only up to the folks who are being oppressed by a system to do all the work to fix those things that are holding folks back. Chris is a longtime member of the APP Association and has extensive experience with the world of grants, which might be a new pathway to educate people about when it comes to starting a business. So, Chris, tell us a bit about your experience with grants. Where do you even begin? What are the pros and the cons of grants? Yeah. I know it's like a whole professional world to just apply for a grant. So how can the average entrepreneur do the same?
So thank you, and I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. Equity is incumbent. It is incumbent on all businesses, all people, to help improve equity and inclusion in the world. And so we're glad and proud to be a part of that. From a grant making standpoint, grants are complicated. Working and partnering with a lot of nonprofits, you'll spend a whole lot of effort to get a $2,000 grant that you can't use on any staffing, but you have to give weekly updates and weekly status reports on this for $2,000. You do a lot of work. And so that's why there's a whole ecosystem around this and understanding what are the right kinds of grants to work with. And the first thing to consider While there are definitely grants out there for for-profits, most grant funding organizations are going to want to partner with a nonprofit. And this is where it gets really, really cool in the world. Nonprofits there's a trust that's building, they have a mission. So the first thing that if you're wanting and interested in this process is, what is your social enterprise? How are you benefiting the world around you? We're not allergic to making money. Making money is completely okay, but you need to understand, in addition to your stakeholder value that you're building, how are you making the world better? And this concept and this phrase I hear a lot, the rising tide rises all ships. As we make the world better, we improve it for everyone. And that's really part of what we're going to do. So at Sagayo, and now more focused on Kavu, we're about helping improve the quality of our workforce. We firmly believe one of the largest risks to the future is definitely the American economy and the economy at large, is our inability to build solid tech talent and have a consistent stream to a really strong, competent workforce. And so we want to make a difference in that. And we provide training and coaching and education that helps improve people's income by making them better. And kind of like Cassie talked about, how can you improve the quality of the credit history and the credit worthiness? We're doing the same with the workforce. To do that, we partnered with several nonprofits to be able to give our services and our training that have a proven benefit, to give them to more people at no cost. Our goal is that no one, of course, we're going to have the $1 market the entire time. No one is unable to get quality education because they can't afford it. We want to see that money not be an issue. And nonprofits can really help with that by funneling funds into scholarship programs that open the door for there. But the way we went about doing that is, one, a lot of free work, finding the nonprofits whose mission we aligned with and figuring out how we can be in the room helping them push their mission, and really truly partnering to understand, well, what are the issues you're working with? What are the issues you're trying to solve? And how can we create programs that help solve that? And in that trust, then we also invested in grant writers and going after the different grants out there. Most nonprofits are going to have know where the grants are, know where the funders are, but they're also often resource strapped. And so how can we help through the process, avoiding becoming a pass-through? It's not about just getting money from a grant and becoming that pass-through agency, but truly, how can we help amplify and become a catalyst for the nonprofits we're working with? Another path, so partnering with, finding the nonprofits in your area, becoming friends with them, investing in their program, and coming alongside and figuring out what grants could be mutually beneficial was one path. The other path is finding what governmental programs are out there. Small Business Administration offers one, but offers a lot of programs. One that I would push that's very interested, that every business in the United States has access to in some form, is through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, so WIOA. WIOA provides federal funds that states manage to be able to help build and give more people access to quality workforce, quality jobs. And so as a small business, hiring is very risky. It's one of the riskiest things you're going to do. Bringing someone into your business to help build it that isn't you as a co-founder, that's a risky decision that you'll make. What WIOA often can do through your local workforce committees and groups is actually, there's this program that we have used a lot called On the Job Training. So OJT. And OJT actually funds 75% of an employee's salary up to a certain amount for the first 6 months. And so as a small business, that allows us to take chances on people that we might not normally be able to from a risk standpoint, because we're actually helping. And it's been one of the best, most common sense things, because everyone truly benefits. We are able to enhance our workforce, enhance our reach and what we're able to do, but we're also able to help people that are in early career that might not have the same background or same opportunity. We're able to give them the opportunity they need to build their career, and whether they continue with Sagayo or Kavu long-term, or we help them find, everyone that's going through our program has improved, and they've improved our business and what we're able to do. And the way you find that is find out who your local workforce boards are, who's in charge of the WIOA funds. So it takes a little bit of research. From there, get and schedule the meetings with the people that are in charge of those resources. Just like I said with the nonprofits, become friends with them, go out to lunch, get to know them, and learn how to partner. Some of the best things, OJT, there was an Incumbent worker program, which funds a large percentage of training for your internal workforce. If you need to go after new sets of certifications or you want to upskill your workforce, there's dollars out there to do that. And we were able to do it. And actually, that created a whole new line of business for us. That's actually how I went to Boston, was through WIO Incumbent worker dollars that we normally would not have had access to. But that's opened up huge amounts of revenue for us. So it's government money done right. It's how can we subsidize the building and maturing of our local small businesses to make them better, make our economy better. Therefore, we pay more tax money, we employ more people, we're able to all make everyone's life a little bit better. It takes footwork, takes a lot of patience. Grant dollars not easy to come by, but when you get those partnerships, when you find the money's out there, they can truly be transformative. And they're not going to have the same kind of credit limitations and those kinds of things. It does require that social equity we talked about. It requires the networking and connections and understanding what's out there. And it also requires you having a genuine purpose, that you genuinely want to make the world better. And it's not just about lining your pockets. How can you make the world better? And how can you profit for people that's their mission and make everyone's life better? And so that was our goal, and some guidance on grants and resources that are out there.
Great. Danielle, I want to turn to you. I think it is so important to see leadership like what Microsoft is doing in this area, and having the larger players in private industry be very involved with that idea of growing the pie for everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about why Microsoft really felt that this was an area that they needed to make a strong commitment to? And I'd love for you to detail a little bit about the investments in minority deposit institutions, because I think that's a really fascinating thing I personally was not aware of existed. And it's really cool that that is one focus of Microsoft's commitment.
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about that. One thing I wanted to raise also is the importance of being intentional in this work. And I think Microsoft really wanted to be intentional as they, started to tackle some of these big structural systematic issues that our country is facing. And so, like I said, Microsoft has been making a variety of investments focused on underserved small business owners to ensure we are helping to enable a more equitable recovery in the wake of the economic and health impacts of COVID-19, but also in the wake of long structural issues, right? One example I could probably share in greater detail is the investment we made in a fund called the Southern Opportunity and Resilience Fund. It's called SOAR. It's a program that was created by a diverse group of community leaders aimed at helping small businesses and nonprofits recover and rebuild from the pandemic. It has a targeted geographic focus on 15 southern and southeastern states that represent more than 50% of the US Black population. So again, really specific and targeted, intentional. 73% of SOAR loans are going to diverse or women-owned small businesses across the South, Southeast, and they're going through key CDFIs and MDI partners. So again, really targeted, very intentional. And another key point around this is these are loans that typically wouldn't have been provided by a traditional bank because they average out around $100,000. And so again, I think the main point I want to make here is Microsoft was very thoughtful, intentional, and really thought about how could we use our resources to actually direct the change we want to see in society. And so that's one example of one fund that kind of gets us closer to some of the goals that we've talked about today.
Oh, that's a really interesting program. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if people want to find out a little more about Microsoft's commitments, is that there a place on the Microsoft website that you would recommend they go to?
Yes, you can actually search in Bing Microsoft Racial Equity, and you will get a full report or giving you a one-year update on the commitments we made last year, and you can learn more about all the great work Microsoft is doing. And I'll make sure, Ashley, that I send you a link. If we could send that out to the broader audience, that'd be great.
Happy to. And Kathleen, I wanted to turn to you sort of for a little bit more of the big picture conversation. You know, we've heard these statistics. What are we as a society missing out on when we're not giving the full commitment and investment into Black and Brown entrepreneurs? What are the bigger things that sort of make this ripple effect that we miss out on as a nation, not just economically, but for our culture and society as well?
I think, don't quote me on this, but McKinsey and Citibank have both done a few pretty large and detailed white papers on the economic output that could be improved if equity was spread equally across the various communities. And it's in the trillions. It's a couple $1 trillion that we're leaving on the table because of not really providing full support economically, both on the consumer, small business side. And so we're, again, putting ourselves at an economic disadvantage against our other trading partners globally. So again, that's putting us behind the 8 ball. Pretty soon, our second largest economy in the world, China will be #1 relatively shortly if we continue. It's almost like a boxer and you're boxing with one hand behind your back. You can, beat the not so great people with one hand behind your back, but when you really step up to bigger competition, better competition, you need 2 hands, right? So it's just incumbent upon us to, be able to tactically do better for ourselves internationally. And then just again, overall from a cultural standpoint, not, you never heard of the phrase that you can, if you show somebody appreciation, they'll go the extra mile. And so you're literally not doing that as a society. We're not doing that as a society to truly enhance, the output that we can get from everyone if we truly give them a true open shot, right? Of enhancing their careers, of enhancing their wealth, of enhancing their opportunities. You'll get so much more output literally out of these communities if you gave them a true shot, right? If you gave them that extra encouragement, again, from a work. So we could do it from a psychological standpoint. You could do it from a financial standpoint. There's so many different things that we're losing out on. And again, not just for Black and Brown folks, but overall the entire community, entire culture. So it's how much bigger do we want our pie, right? If we have a 12-inch pie now and we want a 16-inch pie or a 20-inch pie, it's incumbent on us to grow that pie together, right? So I think that's one of the things that we're missing out on overall. And again, we're missing out on the opportunity to continue to enhance, this great country. And so when we look at kind of what the statistics look like in terms of, 57 cents on the dollar, like we've seen these statistics. We all kind of know them and we can recite enough of them over time, but what are we doing to change that, right? So some of these, again, are very systematic. So the systematic structure is not just in finance. We see the disparate outcomes in criminal justice. We see the disparate outcomes in healthcare. We see the disparate outcomes in education results, right? So it's truly upon us to say, hey, what can we do? Like, I'm not a healthcare expert. I'm not an education expert, but we can see that there needs to be some changes and enhancements in those areas as well. So as a society overall, we kind of have to take a step back and not just look at reports. Reports are great. Data's out there. We have all the data in the world. But what are we actually doing to move the needle, right? That are going to improve the results. And I think that's where, like myself, when I was in corporate and in banking, I was like, all right, I can spot all these issues. And everybody sees the same issues I see, but I could do something about it, right? So let's not just talk about it. I think it's, again, incumbent upon us. Shout out to Microsoft. Shout out to work that Chris is doing to step up to the plate and say, hey, we've all kind of seen these things. We know what it looks like. What are we doing to change that narrative? What are we doing to change the results? Because at the end of the day, skip the narrative. What are you doing to impact results? What are you doing to change that? And again, Danielle has specifically talked about things that Microsoft is doing, right? and it's putting its money where its mouth is. And a lot of other organizations have to do the same, right? Put your money where your mouth is, and maybe you don't get, 100% return or this, amazing result immediately, but knowing that you're putting the steps in place that get us to the right end goal, right? So I think it has to be more than a 6-month nice to do PR thing. It has to be a tactical 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. And I think that's where we truly got it. The rubber meets the road when you're putting these things into your 5-year plan in terms of, creating true equity across the board, within financial services, within healthcare, within, criminal justice, et cetera. So, those are complex things. And again, we like sometimes simple answers, and this is not really a simple thing. So we truly have to, be smart around how we approach these. And even from a complex system or whatever you want to break it down as, there are super tactical things that we can do in bite-sized chunks, right? This conversation is a bite-sized chunk, right? The things that, again, Chris is doing, things that I'm doing, things that Microsoft is doing are bite-sized chunks of a bigger piece, but there still has to be action. And I think, again, understanding and having a framework, having a discussion like this is a part of it. Putting tactical things down and actually executing on it is a part of it. But we also have to assess and learn, right? So even if we put a tactical thing down and a step and we've done X, Y, and Z, and it may have not necessarily yielded the result that we wanted, what did we learn from that? Because then now we can take that learning and adjust and go back at it more effectively. So I think those are some of the things that, I would say are truly needed as we move forward.
And Chris or Danielle, any thoughts you want to add to that from your end?
I'll just jump in. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I definitely think this will require all of us to get involved and kind of get off the wall and figure out what we can actively do. We do have to move beyond statements and actually, we have to put our money and our effort and our resources where our mouths are. And, I'm lucky to be at Microsoft where they're actually doing that. And we are constantly talking with our partners and the community to make sure that we are doing it right, and getting that feedback. I will make sure that I send out to the listeners today our 1-year report. We are constantly talking with folks because you need that chain, that back feed to make sure that what you're doing is the right thing, it is making impact, and that we are delivering on what we're talking about. So I just wanted to kind of share those extra thoughts and support.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to add, do what you can. As a small business, sometimes it could be intimidating. We don't have the resources that Microsoft has. That doesn't mean that it's not incumbent on us to do something. There's a Mother Teresa quote that I was thinking about. You can do what I cannot do. I can do what you cannot do. Together, we can do great things. It takes all of us doing what we are capable of doing to impact the world. And if you can do, maybe you can't do huge amounts of money and investment, but if you can actually go volunteer, can you get in the trenches? Can you do something? And everyone has that ability. We just need to find out how we can be, as Danielle said, most effective. How can we make sure we're doing the right things that are impacting the world? And so, yeah, just because you're small doesn't mean you don't need to be in the fight, doing what you can, and as much as you can.
Great. So we're getting close to wrapping up. So I want to wrap kind of on a positive note. And I want to talk about what are the things that make you feel hopeful, that we can have success in this area. We can make progress, whether it's by mere inches or miles. Personally, for me, as we've said, having this discussion makes me feel hopeful to see small businesses, large global corporations, all working to advance this goal on access to capital in a number of ways, whether it's workforce, home ownership, your own DEI programs internally. This has been a discussion that has certainly lifted my spirits a little. So I will turn it to each of you to give me your kind of last hopeful, what you're looking forward to from these commitments. Kathleen, let me start with you.
Just gonna give it to Danielle. So what am I hopeful for? I think I'm, again, hopeful for conversations like this, commitments from organizations like Microsoft, JPM, and others that have, again, pledged, and Microsoft is living that pledge. So that's super helpful. Marcia Fudge, new Secretary of HUD, has announced a 3x30 program. That's to create 3 million new 3 million new Black homeowners by 2030. Which again will literally close the Black and white homeownership gap. Super aggressive deadline or milestone and project goal. And again, I think that even if she accomplishes half of that, will make significant progress overall. So again, hopefully she accomplishes all of it. Now we want to be a part of this, My Own Pathway. Shout out to the folks that are looking at this. We applied to be a part of that program. Because again, we want to make a difference in those numbers and in that access, and just in general of the country kind of reawakening to some of its challenges and trying to make it better and making sure that all of us are a part of it. Again, not just Black and white, LGBTQIA, access overall. We want to be equitable. Right. I think there's a human nature and need that we're kind of tapping back into, that how do we make this thing better for everybody? Right. We can all be different. Right. I don't have Danielle's experience of life or Chris's experience of life. But our differences combined together make us a lot more impactful. So I'm, truly hopeful that there's enough of us out there that are kind of awakening back up to say, all right, how do we do our little bit, as Chris was saying, to move the needle in the right direction? I'm not George Soros. I can't write in a $2 billion check to, let's make this thing good overnight. But, as we make impact where we can, we're moving the needle closer to that part that, the North Star for all of us. So I'm super hopeful for that and excited for what the future holds.
Great. Danielle?
Sure. I kind of agree again with that. I guess what I thought about was the awareness and openness to challenge the status quo and recognize that, the issues that communities of color are facing and people of color are facing when it comes to building wealth and access to capital are structural in nature, and people's awareness of it, but also their openness to figure out how do we actually fix this problem in a way that gets to those root causes. And I'd also just elevate President Biden's call on all of government approach to racial equity. I really think that has a real opportunity to change the structural problems we've seen not only in government, but financial institutions and society writ large on ensuring equity for all people. And so I have a lot of hope that will make a difference.
And Chris?
And I'm going to go with, we're having the conversation. As a straight presenting white male, sometimes it could be very uncomfortable to be part of that conversation, finding the ways I might have inadvertently perpetuated the social inequity that's in the world. But we're having the conversation, we're working through and we're working together more and more. We're seeing that more people are talking about it, acknowledging it, and acknowledging that we can do better. We can be better as an individual, as a society, as a human race, and we're working towards that. Working slowly, but we are moving, and I would say might be slow, but we're accelerating. We're accelerating some really good ways, and lives are being changed, and we are rising the water level for all, which is encouraging to me. So having the conversation.
All right. And on those uplifting, wonderful notes, I am sure, since we've been talking about pie nonstop as a metaphor here, and it is lunchtime for most of us in the East and Central, I'm sure you're hungry. So we will let you say goodbye for the day. I again want to thank Albert Chang and CFPB for joining us today. And our wonderful panelists will be sending more information on some of the resources and initiatives that they've made. Thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of the Amplify Diverse Talent Working Group here at ACT and the APP Association as a whole. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. blessed day.